Hello, my name is Kevin Bailey and I'm the VP of Strategy here at Cybrilliance. Thank you very much for taking the time out today to listen to what I've got to tell you about how we believe at Cybrilliance that backup and recovery solutions are ineffective for today's data environments. So let's get straight on to the presentation. As we have mentioned, there are some issues around that we are seeing today, the capability to recover data in what we believe is a time-sensitive period rather than a non-time sensitive period. If we check out the backup and recovery environment, and let's look at the nuts and bolts of this, it is focused on copying data and also a need to keep those data copies safe. There are many legacy products out there that are architecturally constrained, and I'll mention about that later. But these companies still need to generate high margins for profitability. There is a very high segmentation element to the market, and that is continually to grow. Whether that's in the cloud, the hybrid, the on-premise market, it's all there to ensure the backup and recovery vendors can meet your business objectives. And there's also this blurred line that I'm seeing coming around that is talking about some associated effects rather than the real capability of the product. One of those is ransomware. Again, I'll talk more about that later, but keep in mind what you hear, you see in the press, and also you see in literature. Backup as such is what I call flex complexity. It's not singular, it is complex, but for a good reason. These organizations need to ensure that you can recover your data to the appropriate recovery time and recovery point objective. We also have secured storage. And secured storage is that ability to make sure that the data that you are copying is secure on the storage medium that you've chosen. And if you look at the NIST guidelines, it will tell you need 3 copies of the data. So that means you've now got 4 versions of the data, including the active version. 3 copies of it. 2 should be on different mediums, and 1 should be offsite. But with all of this activity comes the management and complexity behind it, because backup administrators need to ensure that every copy of the data that you've instructed the product to do has finished. It is recoverable, so you can get the data back, and it's covering all of the data that you want secure in case of an incident. If we now look at the recovery aspect, recovery is reactive. Something's got to happen before it can be put to use. You also require connections, whether that's a connection between the backup and recovery database and the data it's holding, whether it's between the recovery data and the target storage that it's going to, but also for the endpoints and servers and other devices that have got to use this data. All of those require a connection. And finally, we have time. Time is not a luxury when you are dealing with an incident where time sensitivity is key. And that's why in many environments, time is the thing that costs you money, costs reputation, and costs you the ability to get your systems up and active again. If backup and recovery worked in the way that it should, these organizations wouldn't have experienced the targeting by cyber criminals that have gone and stolen their data or have made their data inaccessible to that operation, that environment. And that damages everybody. The next piece I want to discuss is that we at Cybrilliance believe the recovery aspect is disconnected. It's disconnected from the action, i.e., where things are happening. Backups cannot stop active malware and ransomware. What they can do is stop that malware from compromising a copy of the data, not the active data. So when people talk about their ability to help you mitigate ransomware, it is an after effect. It is not the cause. They are putting the action in. People ask, I could store all my backups on site to get rid of this connectivity, but that's not right. That's not, that's stupid. That means you're reversing the cloud systems, the cloud storage, the cloud compute environments that are growing today for all the beneficial operational and cost returns that you get. Again, people talk about removing the dependency on being connected to recover the data. But that's not the way backups are taken today. So you can't recover it without a connection. That's the historical architectural framework that it's built on. And people tell me, but I have a system, I can recover the data in minutes from backups. So it is time sensitive. And I say, great, but was that done during a test? And did it take roughly about twice as long to recover as it did to back the data up? Because that's about the industry norm. But have you done this during a cyber incident? Have you had the environment in place where you've tested this correctly with the type of environment that you're taking those backups for? And then I see across the press everything about immutable storage. I think it's great. Immutable storage has a place. It's read once. You can't overwrite the data or you can't access it because it's been encrypted. I actually helped many years ago to bring out a type of technology like this for robotic tape systems. But remember, immutable storage is not the active primary recovery file or copy. It's the third copy. It's the one that you keep on a different type of media in case the first two have been compromised. And then I hear from endpoint detection and response companies that they keep shadow copies to recover from malware, which is great, as long as they identified the malware that compromised the data. That's when they can recover the data back. Sometimes they have the ability to keep it for 72 hours. They store this in memory. But if they don't identify the malware, they can't recover that shadow copy. And a further thing on this, if they've identified it, why didn't they stop it? Maybe it was an unknown as what people have out there today. And then I ask backup administrators, have you ever recovered during a red or blue teaming exercise? And they say to me, well, that's for security. They're there to try and throw malware in the system and then stop it, identify it with vulnerability testing. But it's not just that. The blue teams should be there when they find a compromise to be able to recover any data that's been compromised. I put this recovery process into place. And then people say to me, well, you've got such a negative about backup and recovery, you must think they're useless. And I don't. They have a time and they have a place, but it is not in the time sensitive arena. Backup and recovery is good for non-time sensitive activities. That's where things need to change. I believe that the way forward is that organizations, CISOs, CIOs, operational people, SOC managers, need to look at active protection and instant recovery as part of their cyber resilience function. If you do this, it means that you can change the way that you can maintain operational agility within your business and not rely on backup and recovery that takes too long. So can we evolve? Can data protection and recovery evolve to meet the needs of today's digital environment? Well, cybersecurity has over the last 20 years. If you think about first when Peter Norton, John McAfee, Eugene Kaspersky first built the first commercial antivirus, anti-malware solutions, that was great. But things changed because the type of cybersecurity threats has evolved. And this just gives a brief overview of some of those attack vectors that we're having to deal with day in, day out. But that's meant that cybersecurity has changed. No longer is it just antivirus, anti-malware. We now have a whole myriad of different categories that allow organizations to protect themselves against the threats of the cyber actors. If you look at it from an operational data and device continuity standpoint, on the left we have real-time time-sensitive cybersecurity. That's job is to detect and respond to the attacks and stop them turning into incidents. When an incident happens, all bets are off. Everybody then is managing that situation. On the other side of the wall, we have a reactive process. This is backup and recovery. This is about replacing damaged goods. This is about replacing copies of data that have been compromised, either encrypted or partially deleted, or in extreme cases, as we're seeing today, the data has been physically deleted from your system. Now, I believe, as do Cybrilliance, that these two functions are mutually exclusive. One is reactive, the other one is time sensitive. One is about replacing after the fact, and one is about detect and respond in real time. But we've got to be able to move on from this. And that's why I believe, as part of Cybrilliance and the partners technology side that we support, that it's time to act now and disrupt normal operations and how we do things. It doesn't mean we have to throw things out. It just means we have to make room for an existing area within our operational environment. And that area is cyber resilience. If we think again about our data and device continuity, as we've mentioned, we have real-time, time-sensitive cybersecurity. And the guys there are doing a sterling job and will keep fighting against the new vectors that the cyber criminals will bring in. On the other side of the wall, we have the backup and recovery vendors. And again, they'll continue to work, as I believe, for non-time sensitive recovery of data. But between them, we now need to introduce cyber resilience in the means of active protection and recovery. The cyber resilience and the real-time, time-sensitive cybersecurity reside together in that operational environment. So what we have is operational continuity, and on the other side, non-time sensitive continuity. The cyber resilience and the cyber security work actively together. One doesn't replace the other. Neither does cyber resilience replace the traditional backup and recovery market. So how does active protection and time-sensitive recovery work? So let's take a file, a normal file that we're creating. I've created a template, for instance, and I've used an example here to show that it's not finished. I'm thinking about things I want to put in it later and want to update it. And I save that file. And then I come back to it maybe 3 or 4 days later, because I'm a busy guy, and I start filling in the blanks. And this is my update to the file. And the update will turn into my new version of the file. Everything's there together, and that's what we manage. So if you think about it from backup and recovery, the original template would have been captured by my full copies that I'd have run on a weekly basis. And then because of the time that I went in and did the changes, those will get picked up by incremental or differential backups that do the changes. So I've got 2 sets here. I've got one which is a full backup, which has got my original. Then I've got my incrementals, and I wait until the following week, and my full backup will now have the full updated version. Now, if I look at this as active data, which is what I provided before, and the backups, when you look at data and device compromise, the capability of somebody from, let's say, the criminal fraternity has come in and wants to get at your data, the active data can be attacked. And remember, this has got through all of the different cybersecurity tools, and examples of this I've shown previously. But even though you are fighting with all your backups, all of your resilience activity, the backups can get compromised as well, excluding the immutable storage. So now we're in a situation where I no longer can get to my data, and I no longer can get to the backups to recover my data either. Many examples of this have been seen, and that doesn't just include on the right hand side the backups, but also the backup databases. If you've got a denial of service vector happening at the same time, you no longer have access to the networks, even if you had the backups to recover from. So this is the situation that you have to plan for. Now, if I look at it from an active protection and time-sensitive recovery aspect, we have our original file. What I'm going to do now this time is layer it. We have the original file, and we have, let's call it the overlay. These are the updates. Now, this is a capability that exists today, where the 2 areas are totally separate, but to the user, they seem the same, i.e. the user sees the original file and the updates as one file, but the system keeps the 2 separated. And what happens with this is that when you actually finish doing your updates at a time, a bit like an incremental or a differential, you apply those changes to the original file. And the system that runs this keeps a log of those changes, what it's updated, what those changes are. Then it replaces the overlay with a new overlay that's blank, and you start all over again. Now, if we look at this from a compromise viewpoint, as we did before, we had the original file, we have the changes, we also have operating system, applications, and also the links to the shared storage that is in the cloud. And we have the overlay. And remember what I said, everything that we have is separated. So when a cyber criminal applies its vectors to your data, whether they be ransomware, encryption, data deletion, or full data wipe, they're going to think that they're applying this to the data and device. But the difference here is the technology that Cybrilliance promotes stops access to the unauthorized updates, any hidden malware, encryption, or anything else that could compromise the data, operating system applications. It isn't doing malware analysis, it's doing data validation. It is making sure that the construction of the data in the overlay matches the construction in the file that it is being applied to. So when it finds hidden malware, that construction would not be the same. When it finds encryption on the overlay, that construction wouldn't be the same. Which means in this environment, the only thing that the cyber attackers can attack is the overlay. It's those changes that have not yet been applied to the original file, and you would lose them. But that's no different to your backup and recovery environment today, where if you've applied a full backup but have not yet applied the incrementals or differentials yet, you would lose those as well. You wouldn't be able to recover them back because you don't have them copied. So in the environment that we are promoting, we have the original file with the operating system and all the applications and changes, and we have the overlay environment that's been compromised. Remember, the original file cannot be compromised. Yes, it is technologically separate from the overlay. Even though it's on the device, whether that's a server or a PC, it is technically not associated. What happens is we delete that overlay. For once, you are talking about recovering data by deleting data. We then find the right changes that you want to bring back to the original file, so you get the last good known state of that file, and then you present a new overlay and you start all over again. And speed is of the essence here. We are talking about minutes to do PCs, laptops, servers, maybe an hour or so if you're talking about hundreds of millions of files. We are not talking about days, weeks, months. Cybrilliance believes that everybody can evolve. You can reposition tools, not replace them, reposition. You now use cybersecurity where it is to stop those attacks and continue to use them to do that. You use backup and recovery tools to do non-time sensitive activity. And you use cyber resilience through active protection and time sensitive recovery to maintain that operational environment. You as a business want to make sure you can extend real-time protection. You want cyber efficacy, i.e., the product does what it says on the tin. You want to reduce complexity. All of the activity that I've gone through for active protection and time-sensitive recovery can be managed by the user themselves, because all of the activity happens on their device, with or without network connections, without backups. You're talking about active, not reactive. This is not cause action in a traditional sense of the activity on your operational system and backup and recovery. The cause action on this for active protection is that it identified somebody trying to offload into the main data something that wasn't correct, and it stopped it in the active environment. You align real value of the function. Our value is about speed of recovery. It's about actively protecting your data. And you eliminate and rationalize protection costs. You don't need 3 copies now for the NIST guidelines, but not in the traditional sense of all 3 are taken by the backup and recovery system. The first version of it is managed in real time by the active protection and time-sensitive recovery system. The other 2 are managed by the backup and recovery product. That helps to eliminate a lot of the costs and the time. The active protection and time-sensitive recovery system only needs about 10% extra for every file for it to manage that environment. It doesn't need 100% times by another 2, i.e. the 3 copies is 3 times the active data. If the active data is a gigabyte, you need 3 gigabytes of back-end copied data. In the case of the active protection and time-sensitive recovery system, if your active data is 1 gigabyte, you need 10% to ensure that you can bring your data back. Well, I hope you found that interesting. And if you require further information about what Cybrilliance can do to help you with your cyber resilience activity, both by using active protection and time-sensitive recovery, as well as discovering all about your data and being able to apply a risk analysis against your data wherever it is and protect it in real time outside of traditional DLP environments, then please get in contact with me. You can contact us at contact@cybrilliance.com or directly to myself, kevin.bailey@cybrilliance.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Please stay tuned. There'll be more videos such as this in the future. Thank you very much.